Hi, and welcome to part 3 of the Freedom of Speech video tutorial series. In our last video, we wrote a simple website for Jacques' hair salon that we were able to see on our clunker computer. But the website is still invisible to the rest of the world. If we check our to-do list, we see that we have completed steps 5 and 6 of our 9-step sequence. In this video, we will begin to investigate how we can launch our website onto the World Wide Web. If you recall at the end of part 2, we had just discovered that we could type the word localhost into the Internet Explorer and that was equivalent to typing our 127 call home number. So let's go find out how the computer was able to make that conversion. We can find the answer to our puzzle by taking a little journey deep into the bowels of the Windows operating system. We start with C Drive, Windows, scroll down to the System32 folder, scroll down to the Drivers folder, etc., and there it is, the hosts file. So, as it turns out, the host file is nothing more than a text file that they've tried to hide from us by eliminating the 3-letter file extension that we're accustomed to seeing in a Windows environment. But we will boldly go where no man has gone before and open it up with Notepad. And we see that this entire file is nothing but comments. Comments all the way down to the very last line, where they finally make a connection between the 127 call home number and the word localhost. And that last line is how they make the conversion. So here's the way the process works. The Internet Explorer runs on IP addresses. But if you choose to type a word instead of an IP address, then the Internet Explorer goes to the host file to see if it can convert the word that you typed into an IP address that it can use to find the website you're requesting. So you see, there's nothing special about the word localhost. So if I were to, let's say, make a similar equivalence between the call home number and any senseless gibberish, let's say grease gobbler, and then we save it and exit out. So now with our revised host file, we have added an equivalence between the word grease gobbler and our website for Jacques' hair salon by going through the IP address 127.0.0.1. Now everyone knows that if you go into the Internet Explorer and type www.google.com, that you get the Google search screen, although you may not know that somewhere out there on the Internet there is a host file, or its equivalent, that makes the conversion between google.com and the IP address 209.85.227.99. So just for fun, let's try a little experiment. Let's go back into the host file, open it with Notepad, and let's try adding the line 127.0.0.1 and google.com. I'll save it and exit. Now we've created a conflict. The host file on the clunker computer says that the Internet Explorer should replace www.google.com with the 127 call home IP address, which will give us Jacques' hair salon. But somewhere out on the Internet, someone else has a host file on their computer that says that if you type google.com, then the Internet Explorer should replace the words with the actual IP address of the Google search web page. So the question of the hour is, if we right now type the words www.google.com into the address bar of the Internet Explorer, which website's going to pop up? Well, I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, so first of all, if you look down in the notification area of the taskbar, you can see that I have replaced the Cat5 cable on the back of the clunker computer, so I am hooked into the Internet. Now we double-click on the blue E to bring up the Internet Explorer, and in order to increase the suspense of this moment, I have changed my home page to facebook.com so that I will have to actually type the words www.google.com into the address bar. Now I hit return, and looky there, we get Jacques Hair Salon. You know, it could have gone either way. It all depended on the guy down at Microsoft who actually wrote the Internet Explorer software. Apparently, he decided to check the host file on my computer first, and so we got Jacques Hair Salon. Now, the reason I did this little experiment with the host file was so that I could start a discussion of domain name servers. So let me tell you the story of Itchy Mitch. Itchy Mitch has himself an annoying skin ailment. His doctor says it might be eczema, seborrhea, or psoriasis, but he's thinking it might be nothing more than a bad case of ticks, fleas, or chiggers. So his sister told him that if he will Google Jacques Hair Salon, then he might find just the right snake oil to fix his problem. So when Itchy Mitch did a Google search, he found out that if he would type JacquesSalon.com into the Internet Explorer, that he would be connected to Jacques' website. But Itchy Mitch does not know that the external IP address of Jacques' website is 58.68.224.10, because after all, Google does not provide us with any information about the IP address of websites. So in this diagram, we see that when Itchy Mitch submits his request for JacquesSalon.com to his Internet Service Provider, the connection cannot be made, because generally speaking, an Internet Service Provider is not equipped to make the conversion from JacquesSalon.com to the IP address 58.68.224.10. In practice, that conversion is made by a service known as a domain name server. Now in this diagram, I show the domain name server as being a single office building located somewhere in Arizona. However, the truth is, there are literally millions of domain name servers scattered all over the globe. So we have millions of domain name servers being updated and maintained by millions of people. And the entire system acts as if it were one large database housed in a single computer in one location. This network of domain name servers handles billions of queries every day. So you can see that my diagram is an overly simplified representation of the facts. However, the point that I want to make is that somewhere out there is a domain name server who has a host file in his computer that makes the conversion between JacquesSalon.com and 58.68.224.10. Once the conversion is made, the domain name server sends the request on its merry way. When the request reaches the Internet Service Provider, it wouldn't be too terribly wrong to think of the Internet Service Provider as making the conversion between the IP address and the physical address of 57 Elm Street, which is where Jacques' Hair Salon website is located on his personal computer in his bedroom. Now, before we leave the subject of the domain name server, I'd like to take a closer look at exactly what it is that the domain name server actually does. As I said before, the domain name server makes the conversion between the words JacquesSalon.com and an IP address via his host file. However, there's an important aspect of that conversion that I've ignored up to this point. The actual conversion that is made has an IP address with a colon on the end, and then the number following the colon is a port number, which in this example I have given as port number 80. So what is this port 80 and what does it mean? Well, port 80 is a communication port on the router of Jacques' home computer network at 57 Elm Street. Now, it was no accident that I chose port 80 to use in this example, because port 80 is the default port that the Apache web server will use for its internet communications unless you decide to change it. So let's take a look at the back panel of my Netgear router. This is exactly the same router that I have sitting in my own bedroom, model FR114P. On the day that I bought my router, I didn't know anything about routers. I just bought it because my friends told me I needed one. So when I got to the computer store, the salesman told me that this is a fine 4-port router that you will be very happy with. So I bought it. Now, looking at the back panel, we can see that there is a hole for the internet wire that goes to the cable modem. Then there are 4 more holes that go to each of 4 possible computers that you can hook up to this router. So here's a trivia question for you. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck? No, sorry. No, the question is, how many ports does a 4-port router have? Because remember, the default port for the Apache web server is port 80. Now I'm warning you, this is a trick question. But I've run slap out of time for this video, so in part 4 of this series, I will answer that trivia question, and then we will begin the process of forwarding the ports on the router. So, until next time, this is the Grease Gobbler.